Good morning, everybody. Nice to see you all here. Welcome to the ninth session in Artists Beyond the Studio lectures by Graphic Studio Dublin during lockdown in 2021. This is the third series of the talks, and in this series we're going to explore the ways in which artists interpret and reflect upon the world around us, presenting us with an altered lens through which to view and reflect upon aspects of our surroundings. There is an element of escape in this process, which appeals to me, jumping into the worlds presented and exploring new ways of looking at a problem, or perhaps finding a solution. For the first in the series, we're going to travel to the Burren in County Clare, where Eilis Murphy works and lives at the moment. I hope we can explore the worlds of books and book arts that Eilis creates, and also her insightful examination of contemporary society and communities. Eilis is a multidisciplinary artist, bookbinder and printmaker, and a member of Graphic Studio Dublin. In 2020, she was awarded the prestigious RDS Craft Award for her book arts practice, Folded Leaf. Folded Leaf is a publishing and bookbinding press set up by Eilis, which creates handmade, limited edition books, often in collaboration with other creatives. Eilis is well known in the studio for her bookbinding skills and has led a group of members through a beautiful series of courses. She has a few of them properly hooked on the medium, I think. I am hoping Eilis will have time to also talk to us today about her wider practice as an artist, working in drawing, print, video, collage, and collaborative community-based actions. Her work observes our relationship with spaces within our communities, often exploring the dialogue between public and private, drawing attention to the power structures and hidden narratives within. I'm fascinated by Eilis's use of juxtaposition within her imagery, placing the real beside the imagined, building ideas and thoughts around some of Ireland's social, historical and ecological issues, ranging from ghost estates and abandoned cinemas to reproductive rights and Sheila na gigs. The book and storytelling are a key part of Eilis's work, but she also draws attention to the historical importance of the printed word and the inherent power within our communities. I'm very interested to hear all about these different facets of Eilis's practice. Thanks for joining us today and welcome, Eilis.
So my name's Eilis. I studied printmaking in NCAD in 2014. I graduated. And while in college, I was always exploring different mediums. I never really, in a way, stuck to one thing. I was kind of drawn by many different techniques, and I love making. I love craft, and I suppose I'm just kind of a curious person. So it's more maybe an idea that might lead me, and then I'll think about what process might work for that. So as Niamh said, I have a mix of work, which would be I do a lot of photography, artist books, sound pieces, video, but one thing that I think that it all hangs together on is collage. So I kind of view my practice as an artist and as a craft maker, as a collage of pieces that come together, that fit together. And I find that I just think that's an important part of my process, is just all these little elements that are floating around the whole time, and at some stage they make sense and connect together, but that mightn't be apparent in the start. So I'm going to show you, this is some early work of mine. So it's from 2006. So I was 2 years out of college, and I was doing a residency down in Westport in the Custom House Gallery. I've kind of a close connection with Westport. I'm from Mayo, but we used to go on holidays outside Westport. We had a caravan, so we used to go on holidays there every year. So I feel a deep sense of connection to that place. So I started creating a series of collages about, it was to do with memory and place, and kind of, again, sitting side by side with reality and with maps and time and the passing of time. And just kind of process wise, I use a lot of monoprints in my pieces. So I just love the kind of quick and easy nature of them. You can just, they're just like drawing. but also I love then photocopying stuff, which is a little bit controversial as a printmaker, but I love the photocopier because I love that you can just blow things up and use things at a different scale, and it just changes your view of them and kind of alters your perception of how they sit together, how they might fit together, and how they're connected. So I really love kind of chopping into prints. So I rarely have editions because they end up getting kind of reused and recycled and cut into, and this could be years later too. Kind of my work kind of drifts forward and back over time. So I just wanted to show you throughout this, I kind of have dotted in artist books that I've created alongside. This was a book that I made in 2010, and it's called Roll Call. It's an alphabetical list of ghost estates in Ireland. So at that time there were, I think it was over 600 ghost estates, and I could really see that in the landscape too, especially in the area of East Mayo where I'm from. There's just so many even still of these kind of very rough, like visually ghost estates, which are half occupied and half not. So I made this book, and so I have an alphabetical list, as you can see in the second picture. I used kind of tracing paper, so it's slightly see-through, slightly, I don't know, ephemeral, or just not all that tangible in a way, even though it is a very kind of blunt way of showing how many there were. And I was interested too in the mix of materials and technique. So the technique I used to bind this book, it's called a Coptic stitch. So it's an exposed binding. And the Coptic stitch is actually has been used since 2 AD, which just kind of blows my mind. And as a crafts person, I just love that about bookbinding, because you're tapping into such an ancient craft, and yet I'm kind of putting a modern twist on it and using it in a different way than it would have originally evolved. But then for the cover of this, I use really rough plywood. So I kind of just wanted to reflect kind of the shoddiness of the materials that were used in a lot of these ghost estates. So it's this kind of juxtaposition of kind of highly polished, well made, and yet the materials are quite shoddy or questionable about kind of tapping into how long will they last, and so on. So next, this was kind of a longer project that I did. It was called Uncommon Land. So what this was it was a series of 3 flash mobs that I organized, and I do a lot of collaboration with other artists, activists, and anybody who was interested. And I really enjoy that part of my practice. It kind of brings me out of my studio and also out of my head, and introduces me to different ideas and perspectives. So this started from a residency I did in Tala. It was with a group of 15 artists, and we were brought out to Tala Cross, just where there was a building there where the Lewis line ends. And it was kind of around new media art, creating new media art together. There was no kind of remit. It was very, very broad. Just the first day they went, oh, go out and see what inspires you. So that's what I did. But when I went out to just outside the door, I started taking photographs, and straight away I was stopped by security guards. And it turned out that the area, even though it just looks like a normal street, and it has, it has I don't know, is it Eddie Rockets, or it has the library, just looks like a regular street, it's actually privatized. So in what you think is a public area is actually a privately owned area, and these areas have different rules which are quite arbitrary. So in this area, one of them was you can't take photographs for no apparent reason. So that I was really intrigued by that. So I decided to organize a flash mob So I'm going to play the video, and I won't play it all, but I can just to give you a taste of what happened. And the photos and footage are from the participants. They gave me the footage afterwards, anything they took, they gave me the photographs. And then each of the photographs I geotagged, which was very laborious. And then I put it up online onto Google Maps. So it was kind of this play between the reality of being there and not being allowed to take photographs, and then the virtual, you know, kind of flooding the area with photographs of the area. And I was just kind of interested in the kind of interplay between that. And I've found with this project, one of the things that has stuck with me, it's surprising when you put work out there, how long of an effect it has, because I've kind of moved on from this work, which is fine. I still really like this project, but I still get inquiries from, you know, students who are doing their theses, or recently an art magazine got in touch about it and they wanted to do an article. And I find that really interesting as an artist. You kind of put something out there, and half the time, or not that I don't think about it, I do think it through very clearly, but the impact can be a lot longer lasting than I would ever imagine. So I might just stop it there. And these are all online on my website, so if you want to see them, if you're feeling hard done by. That one flash mob, the first flash mob that I did, led on to two others, which I did in the IFSC and then outside Facebook headquarters in Dublin. And they became part of an exhibition in the Science Gallery called Hack the City, which was a really interesting exhibition. It was with other artists who were kind of subverting or doing unusual things in public spaces. So I was delighted to be part of that. And the third flash mob, the audience or visitors to the gallery could actually sign up for the third one, which was really great. So I got to meet loads of people who I would never have been in touch with before and who were genuinely interested in being there. So it was a fantastic experience. And you can see here in the background, here are all the photos that were taken at each flash mob. So what I did for the installation, as well as the 3 video pieces, I had this vinyl map on the wall showing all the photographs, and I had a hand-drawn pencil map underneath, kind of showing them, placing them where they were on the map in real life. So kind of after that exhibition, it was a very digital based exhibition. So I just wanted to make something more tangible, something in the real world from it. And what I did was, I showed you just in the previous slide, the kind of vinyl sheet that was on the wall, stuck to the wall with the photographs. It was this huge plastic sheet, and I'm just not into wasting things, and also if it's plastic, I really don't want to just take it down from the wall and ball it in the bin. So it was kind of ridiculous, but also a lot of fun. I like slowly peeled it off the wall and then managed to stick it flat onto big pieces of paper, which then I cut up and made into this artist book. That was a wonderful kind of finish for the project for me, because it was bringing it back to making, which is hugely important. And I find when I'm making, I nearly, not to say that I stop thinking, but I just get so involved, and then ideas seem to sort themselves out in the back of my head without me having to like directly be focused on them. Yeah, so here is another project that I did, which was also collaborative participatory project. So this, I call this Mosquito Press. So for, you might be familiar with the term, but if not, this was, mosquito presses were around, well, I think it's still used as a term, but in 1916 in Ireland, there was loads of, that's just a tractor going by there. There was loads of printed newspapers and pamphlets that activists used to make to get their message out there. That was the main tool for getting what was happening out to the public. But obviously the authorities did not want this happening. So these guerrilla printing presses were kind of slapped down and shut as soon as they opened up. So hence the term mosquito press. So I wanted to do something around that because it was 2016. I thought it would be a lovely idea to set up a mosquito press. So as part of a pro-choice march in Dublin, I organised a 1916 newsroom printing press. So it was for the kind of afters of the march. About 300 people participated in this in total, which was huge, and we didn't expect it to be that big. So it was very, very exciting. And it was such an kind of exhilarating atmosphere after that march. And I always find that I want to do something with that energy. So it was lovely to be able to provide this kind of direction for people to pour that energy or thoughts or feelings into. So what I did was, we had copy girls, so there was about 6 of us, and we had lovely aprons with kind of copy girl written on, and we were kind of facilitating people to engage with the newsroom. So you could come in, there was typewriters, so you could type up a story, a poem, anything you wanted. I also had little blank pieces of paper cut to the size of the newspaper columns, where you could draw pictures, or you could just write whatever you wanted to say. And then I had also more kind of simpler ways to engage, because not everybody wants to sit down and you know, to spend that much time. So I had a wall where there were speech bubbles, where you could just quickly write in something why you were there on that day. And I found that was a great way of just getting people who wouldn't normally engage with art, perhaps, involved, and kind of taking that first step, and to see that they could be part of this and they can contribute, and that their story, our voice, is really valid in this. So, so there was also a donation box. So what you did, you put, I think it was €2 in an envelope, and you wrote your name and address on the envelope. And then afterwards, when I had edited the paper and printed it, you got the newspaper in the post about 3 months later. And people just loved that, because it was like a capsule of that day, and then just to get those feelings again of, yeah, it was pretty amazing. So here's some shots of us actually in the newsroom, and you can see the templates up on the wall there. So it's actually, you can see it's literally like old school copy with a bit of glue sticking it up on the wall, which was really good fun. And there's also people here too typing up all the stories, and there was a kind of a group of people who would come back and forth throughout the day and type up a bit, go away, come back, which was also lovely, that it wasn't just this like single engagement. You could take some time and come back to it. So moving on now. This is kind of I see this as a long-term project. So it started in 2018. I worked, I should say I moved to the Burn. So a different landscape. And I think a lot of my work has to do with place and connection to place and memory. So my work tends to change wherever I am. So I worked with about 9 farmers in the Burn. So I went out with them when they were herding their animals, and I worked, there was farmers who had cattle, sheep, goats, a donkey in one place, and it was a lovely way of meeting people and actually being outside and working outside, which I just love being outside. But why I did this was how it started off was I happened to be just walking down the road in Connemara, and there was a farmer in front of me who was herding cattle, and I wasn't paying much heed. I wasn't really tuned in, but in the next minute he made this call, and I actually just got such a shock because it was exactly the way my grandfather made herding calls. And like, I didn't know that I knew that sound. It wasn't like I would have been out with my grandfather much, if at all. It was like this sound from so long ago that was deeply hidden inside me. And I was so moved and just thought, oh, I have to do something around this. So I worked with these farmers recording their calls, and I'm just really interested in the idea of this kind of intergenerational communication. So, you know, herding calls being passed down from parent to, you know, son or daughter. But also this interspecies communication, which I just think is amazing, and that is passed down through generations of, you know, cows and their calves, and there's something really beautiful about that, and that connection, which is kind of dying away in places. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to play about a minute or so of a sound piece I made. So this is a collection of herding calls. I call this herding orchestra. Herding by Eilis Murphy. So I'll stop it there. I hope you're able to hear that okay. So I just love how just even when I'm listening to that, I kind of get transported back to being out in these sometimes enclosed areas on the landscape, and you can hear the crattle of sticks breaking, you know, through this kind of forested area, but then onto the openness of the burn, and these calls kind of bouncing off the rocks and traveling through the landscapes. And I love even the idea of like, how long have these sounds been you know, bouncing off these rocks for millennia, who knows? And I don't know, that's something that I'm just kind of intrigued by. So, sorry, I just wanted to show a notebook shot. So this is kind of an important part, which I think gets hidden in an artist practice. I have a lot of notebooks, unsurprisingly, because I'm always just kind of making books. But I tend to use notebooks. I have loads on the go at the same time. I don't start one and work through and finish it. I kind of pop in at any page and even sometimes start at the back. And I think that kind of links back to my process of making as being a bit of a collage. I love going back into notebooks and then finding something and realizing, oh yeah, that makes sense now. It didn't make sense when I was drawing it. I wasn't really sure why I was doing that. But now the work I'm doing, I can see where this has come from, and I tend to reuse things. And again, kind of photocopying, blowing things up, and using them in another way. These drawings were made from around that time, and I was kind of just looking at materials that farmers were working with and using every day or coming into contact every day. So, and here is a pretty recent project of mine. So this was a collaboration with a poet, and as I mentioned, I work with a lot of different people, but I do collaborate quite a lot with artists and writers and whoever really wants to collaborate. But I find the artist book is just such a great way of collaborating, because while you can do anything, I think, it's still kind of a, I don't want to say set format, but you kind of have a focus or a container for your ideas and how they come together. So this was a 2-year collaboration that I did with Grace, and how it started was we were just posting snippets of our work back and forth to each other. So, there could be a 2 days gap, but then there could be a month's gap in between when you would get something. And it was a lovely interruption, and I realized that I really enjoy that in my work, and I think that's why I enjoy working with other people. I can get very kind of focused on the one project, and then that's just all I'm thinking about, and my head's nearly stuck in there. But then when something would land through your door, this random 2 lines of a poem, and it would just shift my focus and make me think in a different way, both in our collaboration but also in my own work. So I love being kind of introduced to different viewpoints or different thought processes or work processes. So how this book came about was then after many months, we had a 3-day workshop where Grace came to the Burn, and we worked together, and we kind of teased out like common themes in our work that had unfolded over the months of posting stuff back and forth and responding to each other's work. And then we created this book together. And kind of themes that we were really interested in were kind of the ideas of time being stretched or unfolding, and also creating meditative spaces and a meditative space within a book. And I think one thing I love about this book is you can't actually see it, but there's a bookmark in the back, and I just love it's I think maybe about 28 pages in the book, but I find it quite I just find it a bit comical that you have a bookmark, but yet it just kind of encourages you just to slow down and pause, and that you can dip in and out of this book at any point and then just come back to it. You don't have to read it through, and that's not the idea of this book. Yeah, and that's something I quite enjoy as a concept. And also we hand bound them together, me and Grace, which was lovely. And it was in, I think, August we hand bound them, and we had a launch in September, and it was just like a really brief moment where COVID restrictions were lifted, and we had this outdoor launch in the Burn, where we had kind of a creative writing and bookmaking workshop, which was just so beautiful. Now looking back, it was one of kind of the high point, I think, of my year. And this is the last project I'm going to show. This is my most recent artist book. It's called Words About Words, and it was actually exhibited in the Graphic Studio Gallery over at Christmas. So it's a book with 26 collages, and they're quite esoteric words about language. And how this came about was a friend of mine was moving to Oxford to become a lexicographer, and I'd never heard the word before, and I just thought it was hilarious. I never thought about, like, obviously there's people who work making dictionaries, and so it just kind of triggered this want in me to look up these unusual words about language, or to make a collection of them. And it was just I just made a little list, like a typed list, which I gave the going away present for him. But that was kind of the start of a bigger project, looking at language and use of language, and also trying to, I don't want to say quite illustrate, because they're not really illustrations, but to visually verbalize unusual words. So I have a little video which shows just a flip through of the book. So I handmade 250 of these, and that's one of my biggest handmade editions of my own artist's books that I've made so far. So I was pretty pleased with that. So just maybe a little, oh, it keeps on doing this. A little bit about the process. Again, I kind of saw it as nearly like Pictionary, where you're given a word and how do you illustrate it. So I have lots of different paper. I collect a lot of paper, so I collect a lot of old magazines from secondhand shops, and people give me them. Surprisingly, I sound like a hoarder, but I'm not actually that much of a hoarder. I tend to go through the magazines, and I know quite quickly what appeals to me. So I tend to rip out pages and keep them, and it could be like 6 years later when I use them, but I have a certain aesthetic, or I'm drawn to certain things, and I understand that and kind of trust that. So I don't feel like I have to hold on to everything. So when I was making this book, I tend to work on the floor also. So I sit down, I take out all my papers, and I just find when you see all of these, say this is a scrap of a rubbing, which I did, and it's off wallpaper that's in one of the rooms in our house, and here's some paste paper that I made, and here's from an old kind of book about Mexico. I find that when everything is laid out in a jumble around me, I make different connections that I would never make otherwise. A lot of the stuff I'd never pair it up and go, oh, maybe this thing over here, and take another thing from over here. But suddenly when they're mashed together, they kind of speak to each other in a different way. So I really enjoy that process, and I find it, I make decisions quite quickly. One thing I do is I don't try to create, I don't analyze at all. I just create, I get stuck in. I just think that creating something and analyze something, it's just a very different process. So I make the collages, and I make a lot of them, and sometimes I work very quickly. And then I leave them. So for a few days, or it might be a week, and then I come back to them, and then I kind of relook and go, oh, does that work? Could that be better? How could I change that? So yeah. And I thought I'd just put a bit of a book binding video in. So this is just a short video showing me putting on one of the covers. So this is the paste paper that I mentioned before, and I know a few people here have made that with me. It's a really fun and beautiful way of making patterned paper. It's a little bit like finger painting for adults, but it's been around since like the 16th century. It's a little bit like the equivalent of marbled paper. It's just another way. So again, I just love that tapping into the history and techniques, and just, yeah, using them in another way. The white tool that I'm using is a bone folder. And again, it's a really old tool. It's traditionally made out of cow bone, but the one I'm using there is actually a Teflon one. And I kind of use a mix of both. They both work in different ways. Teflon slides and bone grips. So, and yeah, so it's handy for different things. So that's kind of the end of my presentation. And I just thought I'd end with a kind of where to next. So this is literally this week, I've been planting 600 trees on land that I bought with my partner and a friend. So I'm really, really excited about that. And I think it's something that's in my head a lot is climate breakdown, and it's just so colossal, but I don't really know how to make work about that. So I think this is my work around that, and that it will grow into something else. And I also have a couple of collaborations on at the moment with an artist and another writer, which I'm really excited about too. So thanks very much, Jeremy.
Thanks so much, Eilish. That was absolutely amazing. Really, really, I think I could listen to that herding orchestra all day. Very, very nice on your collages. I think I'd love to see an exhibition of them, like big exhibition of collage pieces. You know, they're just so thought provoking. There's just so much going on. I just love hearing you talk about all the different fragments and the way that you work and piecing them all together. I'm sure people have some questions. I'm gonna start off with one. I'm just wondering, like, has anything about your practice changed since you moved to the Burren? And like, is there anything that you miss? I'm sure there's loads that you love being down there. I'm slightly jealous, but is there anything that you miss from, you know, about living in Dublin?
Yeah, I think my practice changes wherever I'm living. So you can kind of see the shift between quite urban work and, you know, the themes are very, you know, street-based and people-based. Whereas now I've kind of, you know, moved away from that, and it's kind of more land-based and working with a lot less people maybe, but maybe kind of deeper connections. So yeah, I think I just whether I want to be or not, I'm kind of inspired by where I am. In terms of missing things from Dublin, I usually feel like I have to pretend. Sorry. Though I do miss the studio, and it's harder to the graphic print studio, and going up there, yeah, I miss that part of it for sure. So thanks.
And are you able to print at all where you are? Have you any setup?
Well, I'm getting quite into lino prints, and I think I've always loved anyway, just kind of DIY, quite quick processes. I've never been into etching or anything like that. Like in college, I loved screen printing, and I can do that here. I do love lithography also. But I'm more drawn to whatever I can do right here, right beside me, and whatever materials. Oh, I have masking tape, so I'll do something with that rather than look too far away.
It looks like you've a lovely setup there. You know, it's nice when you've found a good spot.
Yeah.
Anyone else got any questions for Eilish?
Just a quick question from Paul here. Eilish, when you left college, did you find it sort of difficult to sort of launch off on a particular project, or just to get started, or how did you find just coming out of college and making your way?
I was really lucky actually, because I won the CAP Foundation Award. I don't know, is that still around? But what it is it's this, they're called CAP Foundation. They selected 2 students each year from NCAD and provided them with this like stunning studio to work in, purpose-built studio, and then with an exhibition as part of that. So that was a lovely kind of cushion leaving college. But still, I think the transition is quite hard, because then the next year it was just like, oh, what do I do now? Because I was always juggling a lot of different jobs, a lot of different types of work. So I did a lot of office temping and random stuff, but I also used to do, again, a lot of art facilitation, which I really enjoyed. But when the crash happened in 2008, that just like completely disappeared overnight. And that was, you know, a little bit of a reality check. So I think that's also too why I set up, not that I set up Folded Leaf for that reason, but why I became more interested in that, because it seems like a sustainable art practice that I can, I can make a living off. Whereas I found that working for other people, it can just disappear overnight. So I was quite purposeful in heading in this direction.
Hi, Eilish. Thanks for that. It was so inspiring. Fabulous to see all the different things you're involved in. But I just wanted to ask you about the project on common land. I think it's amazing you got the exhibition up showing the photographs, but I just wonder how difficult that was for you, to get the permission, and what kind of loops did you have to go through to get the exhibition together?
Could you say the permission from who?
Like, you weren't allowed to take the photographs. So did people stop you, or did you have to get permission, or did you just go ahead and do it anyway?
Well, I think that was kind of the point of it for me. It was kind of like art and activism. It was highlighting that, like, why is this the case? And part of the flash mobs was being stopped. It wasn't meant to be what do you call it?
Confrontational.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It wasn't meant to be that, but it was just more like exposing these areas in Dublin for what they are, and kind of questioning, like, why, who makes these rules? Why are these rules here? So I didn't have many qualms about getting permission from anybody, and I think it just made it very clear to the participants that they might be stopped, and also kind of had a good conversation around what to do if you're stopped, because it's nothing to do with that security guard, or it's not in that way. It's just having an conversation about it, and so.
And did you get any feedback from the owners of the streets or the buildings, or those who were trying to stop you?
Well, the thing is, so the one in Tala is actually owned by NAMA, and that's what really interested me, because I was like, oh, I kind of own this. We all own this. There you go. I'm going to take photos of this. Whereas the ones in the IFSC, they're a little bit more murky, because they're owned, they are, there's a lot of scandals around who owns that, and kind of, what do they call, quangos, I think. Very unclear ownership, kind of these private public partnerships, but they're not really, and it's not really clear who owns what. And there is, I know there's a lot of tension between Dublin City Council and the IFSC. I just can't remember the name, sorry, but over ownership. Who owns what and who maintains what and all that. And I find that fascinating too, because it's kind of like all these hidden, it's nearly like a map of Ireland that has, a jigsaw that you get as a kid, and they're different colors and all these, kind of boundaries between things that you don't see in reality. Then when there's like layers of this bureaucracy and
yeah, I really liked that as well, Eilish. And it is a big issue, because as our streets have become closing down in a sense, and if you look at places like Dunleary, where there might be 50 empty shops and 2 shopping centres, but the 2 shopping centres are exactly what you're talking about. They're private space, and the street, which is public space, is dying, frankly.
Yeah, sorry, Eilish. I know, as well as doing your own work, that you do take on kind of production work of the most beautiful photo albums and books and whatever for other people. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, sure. I kind of have, as Niamh mentioned, actually, I won the RDS Craft Award last year, and that has had like a huge impact on my whole practice, but also the way I view my work. Because when I actually went for that interview, I was very much like, I make wedding albums and I make these books, and I'm not going to tell them anything about my art practice, because they don't want to hear about that. Like, I don't know what I was thinking. And so I have just changed my view through the help of actually Roisin de Butler, who is a glass artist, and she's also the chair of the RDS Craft Award. And I asked her, would she mind mentoring me over the year? And that has been like an incredible experience. So she has helped me realize that my art and my craft, they're one and the same. They all feed in and out of each other. And kind of with that in mind, I've pulled back a lot from making albums and making notebooks, because I'm not to say that I'm not all that into that, but what really inspires me is when I'm working with other artists. So I love working with, as I said, like writers, artists, to collaborate and make artist books. So that's what I'm focusing on anymore. And I've kind of changed my website a little bit because of that. So for instance, I'm going to be working with Mary Ruth Walsh, who is an artist who has an exhibition, Skin Deep, coming up. And we're collaborating on, I'd say, what normally would be a catalogue, but it's going to be an artist book as part of the exhibition. So an edition of however many, but very kind of unusual structure, and I'm really excited about that. So yeah, that's kind of what I'm doing more so now.
What artists have inspired you or do inspire you, and do you follow any particular threads of practice?
Thanks, Kieran. Yeah, that's an interesting question. I think I've kind of go back to the whole collage thing again. I kind of, I don't think there's any main one artist that I would follow, but I find actually Instagram, I'm a little bit hooked at the moment, as a lot of people are with COVID, but I follow a lot of artists there and I really, really enjoy that. And actually I follow a lot of members of the graphic studio and I love seeing your work. And I think it was Aoife Scott put up her notebook the other day, and that actually inspired me to put my notebooks in this talk. So I was like, oh yeah, like I find that endlessly fascinating, hearing about my contemporaries' process of working. So that would be a big influence. And then in terms of other artists, well, there's Red Fox Press in Achill Island. They do amazing artist books and I just love their work. And there's a few other, Mermaid Turbulence are another artist books. They're not active anymore, but they still sell their books and they're just really fascinating, really kind of dense, beautiful books. And then other artists, kind of bigger artists. I love Max Ernst and Rachel White-Reed and Matisse. So
yeah. That's brilliant. And if you don't mind a supplementary question, did NCA prepare you for what you do now, or is what you're doing now a reaction against how you were taught in NCAD?
NCAD, that's a really interesting question. I don't know. I think something that gave me a bit of a lesson was, the crash in 2018. I think I was very focused on doing a lot of facilitation work, arts facilitation, and just when that disappeared, I kind of really realized, okay, if this is ever going to work for me, I have to be a little bit more strategic about this and really build up my own work and my own practice and kind of be more steady in myself rather than looking out externally for work. And in terms of NCAD, I don't know. I don't know what I'd change. I really enjoyed, learning print, and I loved the hands-on skill of that. I think it's changed a lot since I was there, and I think they do give you a lot more practical advice for after college, because that was pretty minimal, I would say, when I was there.
Hey Eilish, it's Niamh McGuinn here. I just wanted to say hi and also to ask you a little bit about, I suppose, contemporary collage. I'm just very interested in your take on it, and particularly just collage. It's amazing that I suppose you've got your activism, and that's so closely linked as well, and the print angle of collage being integral. Maybe just have another few words, a few minutes of you're talking about that.
Yeah, trying to think.
I suppose do you maybe what's it like, you know, are there other collage artists that you are aware of in, say, in Ireland or internationally, that you can see a new resurgence of it? Or
I'm not too sure. I suppose I follow a lot of artist bookmakers, and there's a huge use of collage in that, because I think nearly like a page is like a collage. You're piecing together all these pages together. So you know, if you took them all apart, it would be a collage, a huge collage of ideas. So I'm trying to think of more. I'm constantly looking at books of collage artists. I'm terrible with names, so I can't really remember any, but I suppose I'm really drawn to artists who use drawing. So even like pencil or very pared back kind of line drawing, who use them in their collages.
Yeah, that's really unusual, isn't it? Yeah.
I just think it's so beautiful. And I love, actually what I do loads of actually is rubbings. So just taking, you know, with a crayon up against the wall or wherever. And I just love the contrasts between textures and lines. So you can have this very kind of pared back drawing, but then juxtapositioned with this, you know, just quite intense texture, and yeah, just how they react or respond to each other. I think, you know, sometimes I'd go out for a walk and I just get sucked into like looking at an old wall that has like peeling paper and, you know, peeling paint or whatever, and just kind of the layers and layers of color and kind of history and time that has passed. It just is quite fascinating.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, thanks, me.
Thanks so much, Eilish. That was inspiring and enlightening, and I think everyone got a lot out of it. Really nice to get an insight into what you get up to down there, and you know, like there's so much going on in your practice. It's really nice for us to get a look at it. Thanks everybody. If you want to see more of Eilish's work, obviously the Folded Leaf website, and there's a few of her prints up as well on our graphic studio website.